The Sony PlayStation is a freaking legend. One of my favorite systems ever. I had a PS1 back in the day, and to this day, it's still one of my favorite systems to play. Tons of games on the PS1 have aged beautifully, in my opinion, which will probably be ignored, but hey, I tried. But here's the thing, the PS1 had a huge game library. Oh my gosh, if I had a nickel for every PS1 game that was released, I'd have, hang on, a lot of nickels. Holy jeez. But with such a massive library, finding good PS1 games is a pretty tricky task. Lucky for you, TechDweeb is on the job. I love hunting for lesser known games, finding the good ones and sharing them in videos like this for dorks like you, and whenever I'm not in the tub or working on my blanket fort, you better believe I'm always 100% hunting for lesser known games on the PS1 sometimes. And I've already found a freaking ton of them. Way too many to share today. So I'm going to show you 5 today. That's what I like to do in these lesser known games videos because I want to have enough time to talk about each game and actually explain it, rather than flying through a heck ton of games all super fast. And that also means that I'll have more PS1 lesser known legends like this coming along, so get subscribed so you don't miss those. Our first game is a game that I know most people aren't aware of because you can never actually buy this game. It's called Thrill Kill. This game is just bonkers, and I love it. If you're into fighting games, bizarre characters, and absolutely ridiculous fatalities, this game will scratch that itch, among other things. Thrill Kill is the definition of a cult classic, and there's a good reason because you needed to know about this game and seek it out to actually be able to play it. It was released by Midway Games, who also released Mortal Kombat, but this one was too violent, so they couldn't release it. This is back in 1998, and back then the talking heads on the news were always going on and on about this or that game and whether it's causing kids to become violent murderers or whatever. This was around the time that the ESRB rating system was created, and Thrill Kill was just too much for our primitive sensibilities. What with all the dismemberings and the decapitatings and the mutilatlings that were, to be fair, excessive, even in the post-Mortal Kombat world that we lived in at the time. As you can see, this is an arena fighter. 4-player free-for-all. You choose from 9 characters, and these guys are freaking hilarious. You've got Cletus, who beats up people with a severed leg, Dr. Faustus, who is a deranged doctor, Belladonna is a dominatrix with a whip, the Imp, who is a little dwarf guy on stilts, Mammoth is a big hulking gorilla dude, Oddball is a mental patient with a straitjacket, Tormentor is a leather punk BDSM guy, and Violet is a creepy carnival contortionist. And I think you can unlock other characters too if I'm remembering correctly. The game's combat is pretty basic. You move around, you go in for fast and hard punches and kicks, and you can block and duck. What's unique here is that instead of building up damage, you're filling up your thrill kill meter. When it's full, you get a burst of energy and everyone else has to run away from you. And if you can catch someone, you move in for the kill and unleash a gory finishing move. We're talking heads being ripped off, blood and bodies exploding all over the place, just lots of that good old ultra violence. The actual combat is good, but there's only a few basic game modes and settings. Not that you need more modes, you can have a ton of fun here, but once you've played this for a few hours, you've kind of seen all there is to see. It's great while it lasts though, and that's fine by me. That's one of the best things about retro gaming these days. You can try these games out, and when you're done, you move on to the next one. And the next one is Hogs of War. I played the heck out of this game. Back in high school, my buddy with a PlayStation had this, and on our game nights, we played this for hours. If you're familiar with the Worms games, this is basically that, but 3D. The concept is that you have a team of hogs, 4 cute little piggies wearing adorable little army guy outfits. It's a turn-taking game, so on your turn, one of your piggies gets to do something. There's a timer, so you only have like a minute or so, and the maps can be pretty big, so getting around can be tough. And there's also jetpacks that can help you get places faster. There's crates of weapons and health scattered around the map, and each piggy has an inventory full of stuff. There are melee weapons like the bayonet, there's guns like rifles and machine guns and shotguns, there's explosives like grenades and gas grenades and bazookas and mortars, and a bunch of other stuff. Just like Worms. When you go to shoot for the weapons with aiming, you actually get to aim your shot. And some weapons are trajectory weapons, so you can change the angle of your shot and then choose the power. Each of these has a different distance, so it takes a while to get a feel for the kind of settings that you need to be able to actually hit your targets at a distance. There's also environmental hazards like lakes to drown in, mountains to fall off, landmines to blow you up, and you can hit your enemies into these hazards too, which is like adding insult to injury. There's an entire single single-player campaign mode that introduces stuff to you slowly. There's a tutorial to teach you the mechanics, and then levels increase in complexity and difficulty. But the real ham and potatoes of this game is the multiplayer mode, because you can set up any scenario you want. You can use that to play against real people or just set up custom bot matches. There are a ton of different game modes and maps, each with different terrain and different weapons, and there's even a generator. You can procedurally generate the terrain and randomize your locations and the weapon drops. This kind of stuff is pretty common in games today, but back then the idea of a game that you could play forever with infinite maps that are different every time was a very novel concept. It blew my dweeby little mind, I tell ya. When I eventually got a PlayStation back in high school, I was really happy that I finally had a good system that could play 3D games, but one game that I always wanted to play but I couldn't was The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. I was craving a game like that, so I went to my friend who was a PlayStation nut who had a mountain of PS1 games. He was like a PS1 encyclopedia, he knew them all. And I asked him straight up, what is the game on the PlayStation that is most like a 3D Zelda game? And without hesitation, he said Brave Fencer Musashi. And then I guilt-tripped him into letting me borrow his copy. And I played through the whole game, and I beat it, and I loved it to bits. This is definitely going to be a Dusty Game Society game in the future because I'm itching to play this again. So like I said, this game feels like Zelda. It's a Square Enix game from 1998, and it blends a fun, easy breezy story with charming characters and tight, satisfying RPG gameplay. You are Musashi, a young spiky-haired swordsman summoned to save the Elucinate Kingdom from the evil Thirst Quencher Empire. I don't know why it's called that. If there's a reason, I forget. The plot is charming with lots of quirky dialogue and great characters. They strike a good balance between making the adventure feel both epic and lighthearted. Yeah, sort of like Zelda, you know? It's an action game, but it's a good mix of action and RPG elements. You've got real-time combat with a variety of sword techniques and special moves that Musashi learns by defeating enemies. The gameplay is snappy and responsive, making battles feel satisfying. The day-night cycle and real-time clock add some depth because certain events and enemies appear only at specific times, so it encourages and rewards exploration and planning. Also, there's the ability system. Musashi can steal abilities from his foes, sort of like Kirby, I guess. And that adds some nice variety in the strategy because you need to decide which abilities to use and when. This keeps the combat fresh and it gives you some diversity in how you approach challenges. Even playing it now briefly as I recorded the gameplay for this video, Brave Fencer Musashi charmed me with its art style and the vibrant environments and colorful characters. Just lots in here that bring the world to life. And great music too. It perfectly complements the game's whimsical and adventurous vibes. The puzzles and the platforming elements are well designed, and this is another game that I never hear anyone talking about. So you should play it and talk about it, because it offers a different kind of adventure compared to its more famous counterparts like the Green Hat Boy. That same friend who got me into Brave Fencer Musashi, he loved this game. He got me into this. I never heard about it before he told me about it, but I fell in love with it. I played a freaking ton of this, and to this day, I never hear anyone talking about it. It's called Deception 3 Dark Delusion. It's the third in this series. I never played the other ones. This is the best one, I hear. This is sort of a tactical role-playing game. What's unique here, unlike most RPGs, this game revolves around setting traps rather than directly fighting stuff. The protagonist is this girl, Reina, who has the ability to place and activate these traps, and you can use them to defeat the enemies. And there's also some sort of story, something about a mystery related to her pendant. I don't remember all the details, but I do remember liking the game for its story as well as the gameplay. The main appeal for this one is the trap setting stuff. It's almost a puzzle game because you can create like intricate trap combinations from a bunch of base types of traps. And it's all about the way you combine them in novel ways. There's like thousands of possible configurations. To do well, you need to consider the level, terrain, and hazards, strategically plan and anticipate enemy movements, and use your brain and set the traps in a way that everything will work out. And when you pull off a complex trap combo, it feels so dang satisfying. Because it's an RPG, there's obviously progress. You earn Dreek, which is your key resource, and it's basically the game's way of dealing with currency and XP, and you get more Dreek based on how complex your traps are when you kill something. Apparently there's multiple endings based on the choices that you make. I don't think I ever actually saw the ending. I don't think I beat this one, but firing this up to record gameplay for this video made me really want to play it through. It's been so long that I've basically forgotten everything about it, and I'm loving experiencing the game with fresh eyes. I don't think this one will be for everyone. If you want a familiar feeling RPG game, then you won't get that here. Deception 3 is a hard game, kind of a different way of thinking required to do well. Some stuff to figure out, and the story is pretty all over the place. But it's a really nice take on RPG. Doing the combat in this new way feels so different from most traditional RPGs. It definitely stands out, and it's definitely a lesser known game because I never see anyone talking about this one. There are dozens, if not millions of games in the Mega Man universe. Most of them are action-y platformer games, but there is a series of Mega Man games that went into the full 3D role-playing game genre. I speak, of course, of the Mega Man Legends games. I haven't played the actual Mega Man Legends game a lot, but they look good. I'll give them a try someday. But there is a spin-off game in the series that I loved, and it stars the villain from one of the Mega Man Legends games. I'm talking, of course, about the Misadventures of Tron. We played this game earlier in the year for the Dusty Game Society, so check out my full review link below if you want to know more about it. And I was surprised at how many Dusty Game Society members and how many people in the comments didn't know about this game. Lots of comments from people who had no idea it existed, discovering it for the first time. So I'm not sure if this is technically a quote-unquote hidden gem, but it definitely feels like a lesser-known game to me. Let me know in the comments if you knew about this one, or if you played it back in the day. So in this game, you are Tron. In the intro, we learned that Tron's brother, Teasel, made a deal with a corporate gangster guy, and he couldn't pay his debt, so they kidnapped him. And Tron, being the upbeat, perky little go-getter that she is, decides that she's going to save him by paying off his debt. But because she's a bad guy, she's gonna get the money the only way she knows how, by stealing it. So the game plays out over several acts, and in each act there are a bunch of missions. And you can pick and choose which ones you do, and as long as you raise the money to get to the milestone, it doesn't matter which ones you actually end up doing. What's very cool here is that each mission is different. There are some missions where you're exploring an open world temple, some where you're going around a city stealing from buildings, some where you're in a dig site and it's more of an RPG thing, some where you're in a grid and it's a puzzle game, and then there's this whole metagame of the ship stuff, because between missions you're on your ship and your evil guy minions are these cute little robots called servbots. They go with you on your mission, but you can also do stuff with them on the ship, like train them and level them up, and there's even some fun little stories and side stuff that happens with them. Mini games too. This game is just a lot of different stuff. And it's well written, great voice acting, great art and graphics. It's special, and I wish there was more games like this, not just on the PS1, but in the world today even. Check out my full review, or better yet, just fire it up and start smashing some cities in a giant mech and playing with little Lego robots in your spare time. And that's it. That's all I have for you today. 5 fantastic, lesser-known PS1 games that tend to fly under the radar, all of them worth giving a go on your retro doodad of choice. Speaking of which, in the footage today, I was playing all of these PS1 games on this, the RG35XX Plus, which I call the Bezazzle. This is the handheld I crowned as the best handheld, and it's definitely amazing for PS1, so check out that video, link below if you want to learn more about it. And there's a link down there if you want to pick one of these up for yourself. But, and that's a big but, since this is my first lesser-known PS1 games video, I'd love to hear from you. What are your personal PS1 lesser-known games that you want to suggest? I promise I'll check out every game that you share in the comments, and who knows, maybe if you put one down my radar, I'll show it in a future video, and I'll be sure to give you credit if I do. How does that sound? I'll answer for you. It sounds splendid. And that brings us to the end of this video. Click the thumbs up button if you liked it, or don't if you didn't. That's it from me. I'm TechDweeb. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.